After 3 years of saving and planning, my wife and I decided it was time to buy a new home. Our tiny little townhouse was getting a bit small for our 2 kids and we thought it was time. The problem? So did everyone else. We started looking at places around the middle of last year, and every week that went by it felt like there are more and more people and more competition. And this year it's only gotten worse. So if you're trying to buy a home in a busy, hot market, you want to watch this video. Speaking to a lot of home buyers at the moment, we're hearing the feedback week in and week out. Open homes are busy, properties are getting sold within hours, and it just generally feels unfair. So how can you actually buy a home in a hot market? Well, the good news, in this video, we're going to go through my top 3 tips on buying in a busy property market. So let's jump in. Number 1, plan in advance and know your limits. As I've covered in an earlier video, when I started my most recent property journey, we didn't exactly have a clear picture of what we wanted. Initially, we were going to buy something to renovate. Then we're going to do a complete knockdown. Then we realized that we just want an existing home that we can move right into. And it's a common problem with a lot of home buyers out there. You start off thinking that maybe I want to live here, maybe I'll buy a townhouse, maybe I'll live further out. And there's too many options. You need to be planning in advance because the property that you just missed out or just slipped out from under your fingers was likely bought by someone who knew what the property was worth, how much they were willing to spend, and what their limits were. You need to be understanding what properties have sold for in the most recent weeks. At the moment, we're finding that it's a week-by-week market, and properties that may have sold on the same street in January for one figure are going to be completely different. The stats from last month where Brisbane's property market went up by almost 2%. That's almost 24% annualized. It's wild. And with the market moving that fast, you need to reassess week by week. The tool I like to use for this is realestate.com.au's recent sales. If you jump on there, you can filter by suburb. It'll have auction results, but also what the private treaties sold for, so you can know what properties in your target suburb sold for last week. How can you understand this week's results? A great way to do it is go on realestate.com.au/auction results. This is updated every Saturday night, and it has all the results from the prior week in your state. Now, the awesome thing is when you click in here, it doesn't just have the auction results, the 61 or the 84 that sold at auction, it has all the private sales as well. So say, for example, Acacia Ridge, you can look at these recent private sales and know this place actually sold for $385 this week, and this one sold for $380, and it may not show up on RP data or on any of the other comparison websites for a few months' time. So that's a really good way of getting an insight into the local area. Now, another thing that I do is once you get to know a couple of the local agents, you can kind of go on their Facebook page and get a sense straight from the horse's mouth on what's selling in your area. So say, for example, in Brisbane around here, there's no results this week, but a local agent, Wakely Properties, is on there, is a pretty specialist in this area, and you'll get to know the 4 or 5 agents that are pretty prolific in your local suburb. Now, the good thing about this is they love to post their results every week and stuff that's selling to give you a sense of what has sold in the last week. And again, to have your finger on that pulse to know what things are selling and what you probably will expect to pay in the current market. Number 2, be aware of the agent. Now, I don't want to go into a tirade and say that you shouldn't trust the agents, but you've got to remember that the agent is there working for the seller. And it's their job to sell the property as quick as possible for the highest price possible. They're not there to help you as the buyer. The most frustrating thing that we're seeing at the moment is you need to be careful of the photos, because the wide angle, beautifully lit photo that you see online is often pretty different from the reality. Take your time in the open house. Don't feel rushed. Look through the cupboards, look under the house, check out if there's any obvious signs of damage. Because the thing we're finding at the moment is the agents can use a crowded open house to increase your anxiety and increase the urgency to feel like I need to make an offer quickly. I'm gonna miss out. One of these other 100 people here are gonna pick up the property and I'm gonna miss out. The only way to beat this is by seeing more properties. The more places you can see, the better a sense you're gonna get on what you like, what you don't like, and not be like me when I saw my first unit, I loved it because I hadn't looked at any other apartments in the area. So try and get out there and see as many open homes as you can. Even if it's at a lower price point, at least you're gonna get a better sense of what you can buy for your money and how far it can actually go in the same suburb. My 3rd tip is be organized before you put in your offer. Now, the process around this is going to vary from state to state. At a minimum, you want to have at least spoken to a mortgage broker to get a sense of your borrowing capacity, what the repayments are going to look like, if you're actually eligible, what if you've changed jobs recently, what if you're buying in a high density area, you're buying in a building that your bank may not even lend on. Chat to your broker to be organized so then when you go in there, you can make your offer as competitive as possible. Unfortunately, right now we're finding out that terms on contracts like shorter finance days and less days for building and pest aren't moving the needle as much as the highest price. So just be aware of that. If you've done your research properly, you're gonna know that although the same property 6 months ago might have sold for $50,000 or $100,000 less, it's not 6 months ago and you need to be willing to meet the market. Or just take your time and wait. Have a breather and wait 6 months and see what happens then. It's entirely up to you. My bonus tip is don't rely on crystal ball predictions. In other words, just because the commentators are saying the property prices could go up by 20% doesn't mean they're gonna be right. If you remember a year ago, we were talking about COVID and there were people saying that the property market would and could drop by up to 40%. None of that came to pass. I think the important thing to remember with property is it's a long-term game. So if you're getting into the market to try and make a gain and get ahead of everyone else in the next 12 months, you're doing it wrong. You shouldn't be looking at that short term. You need to be thinking and taking a bit of a 10 to 15 year view. So that's it today, guys. That's my tips for buying in a busy market. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below.